Alright, let's talk about Ireland. It's the 1840s and things are tough. Most Irish families lived in poverty. They were depending on one thing to survive: the potato. It was cheap and plentiful. Now, Ireland was under British rule then. The Irish were essentially second-class citizens in their own country. The land they worked on, the laws they lived under, all controlled by the British. Imagine living like that year after year. It started subtly, a whisper of trouble in the air. The summer of 1845 was unusually wet and cold. Then, almost overnight, a strange sickness infected the potato plants. The leaves turned black, the stalks wilted, and a foul smell rose from the rotting potatoes. Panic spread like wildfire through the Irish countryside. The potato, their lifeline, was being destroyed before their very eyes. The Great Hunger, as it came to be known, had begun. Now, the potato might seem like a humble thing, right? But for the Irish peasantry, it was a godsend. It grew well in the damp Irish climate, and you could get a good few spuds from a small plot of land. A family could live off their own potatoes for most of the year. But because they relied so heavily on the potato, the Irish people were very vulnerable. If something were to happen to the potato crop, well, it wouldn't be pretty. And that's exactly what happened when the blight arrived. To make matters worse, these landlords often lived in England, miles away from the suffering in Ireland. They were absentee landlords, more interested in profits than people. They could evict families who couldn't pay their rent, leaving them homeless and desperate. Imagine that, working your fingers to the bone on someone else's land, only to be thrown out with nothing but the shirts on your back. The Irish were trapped in a system that kept them poor and powerless. When the blight struck, it exposed the fragility of their existence and the deep inequalities that plagued Irish society. The year 1845. It started like any other, the fields bursting with life, the air thick with the promise of a good harvest. But then the whispers began, whispers of a strange rot eating away at the potato plants. The potato, the lifeblood of the Irish people, had been struck down. The once abundant crop, the source of their sustenance, was now a rotting, inedible mess. Panic seized the nation. The government, slow to react and even slower to understand the magnitude of the crisis, seemed powerless to stop the rot. As the blight tightened its grip, hunger stalked the land. People were reduced to eating anything they could find: wild berries, roots, even grass. But it wasn't enough. Their bodies, weakened by starvation, became easy prey to disease. Typhus, cholera, dysentery, these deadly diseases ripped through the weakened population with terrifying speed. Hospitals overflowed with the sick and dying, their corridors echoing with the groans of the afflicted and the cries of the bereaved. The sight of starving children, their bellies swollen, their limbs like matchsticks, became an enduring symbol of the Great Hunger's cruelty. With their homes gone and their livelihoods destroyed, many Irish families saw no other option but to flee. They packed their meagre belongings and set off for the ports, desperate to escape the nightmare that had engulfed their homeland. The ships, overcrowded and unsanitary, became known as coffin ships for the high number of passengers who perished during the perilous journey across the Atlantic. Those who survived the journey often arrived in their new land weak, sick, and penniless. The mass exodus from Ireland during the Great Hunger was a testament to the desperation of the times. Now, you'd think that with all this suffering, the British government would have stepped in to help, wouldn't you? After all, Ireland was part of the United Kingdom then. But the response from London was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly what you'd call compassionate. The government at the time was all about this newfangled idea called laissez-faire economics. They did provide some aid, like opening soup kitchens and importing maize from America. But it was too little, too late for many. The British government continued to export food from Ireland throughout the famine. To make matters worse, The government introduced these things called workhouses. Now, the workhouses were supposed to be a place where the poor and destitute could go for food and shelter. But in reality, they were more like prisons. Families were torn apart, forced to live in squalid conditions, and made to work long hours for meager rations. Disease spread like wildfire in these overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. The workhouses became a symbol of the government's indifference to the plight of the Irish people. Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom. There were individuals and organisations, both in Ireland and abroad, who stepped up to help. Quakers, for example, were tireless in their efforts to provide relief to the starving. They set up soup kitchens, distributed food and clothing, and did what they could to ease the suffering. And then there were the Choctaw Indians. Despite their own poverty, they managed to raise money to send to Ireland. But sadly, these acts of kindness were often overshadowed by the indifference and even hostility of others. This callous attitude, combined with the government's inadequate response, fueled a deep sense of resentment and anger among the Irish people. They felt betrayed by the British, abandoned in their hour of need. The Great Hunger, as it came to be known, wasn't just a natural disaster, it was a human tragedy, exacerbated by political inaction and social injustice. The memory of the famine would cast a long shadow over Anglo-Irish relations for generations to come. It would fuel Irish nationalism, contribute to the push for home rule, and shape the destiny of both nations. The Great Hunger was a turning point in Irish history. Now, behind all the statistics and historical analysis, it's important to remember that the Irish famine was ultimately a human tragedy. Take the story of Bridget O'Donnell, a young mother from County Mayo. She lost her husband to fever early in the famine, leaving her alone to care for their 3 young children. Desperate to feed her family, she walked for miles to the nearest soup kitchen, only to be turned away empty-handed. In a heartbreaking twist of fate, all 3 of her children succumbed to starvation within a matter of weeks. Bridget, broken by grief and hunger, was forced to leave her home and wander the countryside in search of food and shelter. These stories, as harrowing as they are, represent just a fraction of the countless lives touched by the Great Hunger. The famine forced people to confront unimaginable choices, to make impossible decisions in order to survive. Faced with starvation, people resorted to desperate measures. They ate anything they could find: nettles, weeds, even shellfish and seaweed. Some families were forced to sell their few possessions, clothing, furniture, even tools, in exchange for a few scraps of food. Others, their bodies weakened by hunger, turned to begging or theft, risking imprisonment or even death in order to survive. The psychological toll of the famine was immeasurable. The constant fear of starvation, the loss of loved ones, the breakdown of social structures. These experiences left deep scars on the Irish psyche. Many survivors carried the trauma of the famine with them for the rest of their lives. The famine also had a lasting impact on Irish culture. Abandoned villages, ruined cottages, and mass graves serve as stark reminders of the devastation wrought by the Great Hunger. Yet, amidst the suffering and despair, the famine also sowed the seeds of change. It exposed the deep inequalities and injustices that plagued Irish society, fueling a growing sense of nationalism and a desire for self-determination. The famine generation, having endured unimaginable hardship, emerged with a steely resolve to create a better future for themselves and their children. The mass exodus from Ireland during the famine years had a profound impact on the Irish diaspora. The Irish diaspora, shaped by the shared experience of the famine, played a crucial role in shaping the political and cultural landscapes of their adopted countries. The famine had a massive impact on Ireland, changing the very fabric of the nation. Imagine this. Before the blight hit, Ireland had a population of over 8 million. But by 1851, just a few short years later, over 1 million people had died from starvation and disease. And it doesn't stop there. Another million, give or take, fled the country in search of a better life. Can you imagine the heartbreak of leaving your home, your land, everything you've ever known? It was a decision born of desperation, a last resort for families facing unimaginable hardship. They crammed onto overcrowded ships, known as coffin ships, bound for America, Canada, and Australia. The conditions on board were horrendous, with disease and death a constant threat. The mass exodus left Ireland a shadow of its former self. Entire villages were abandoned, the land lying fallow. The population continued to decline throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a stark reminder of the famine's enduring legacy. The legacy of the Great Hunger is complex and multifaceted. It's a story of loss and suffering, but also of resilience, determination, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The famine forced Ireland to confront its demons: poverty, inequality, and political subjugation. It ignited a fierce sense of nationalism, a determination to forge a new destiny for the Irish people, free from the shackles of oppression and neglect. The mass exodus during the famine years led to the establishment of a vibrant Irish diaspora across the globe, each community carrying with it the memory of the Great Hunger and a deep connection to their ancestral homeland. The Irish diaspora has played a pivotal role in shaping the political, cultural, and economic landscapes of their adopted countries, while also maintaining strong ties to Ireland. Today, Ireland stands as a modern, prosperous nation, a testament to the resilience and determination of its people. But the memory of the Great Hunger continues to serve as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the importance of social justice, compassion, and the need to address the root causes of poverty and inequality. It's a reminder that history, even its darkest chapters, can offer valuable lessons for the present and the future.